the recording? Alright, yeah, this time it worked. Welcome to QTP class. This is the first week of QTP, that is, today is the third day of UFT class. We'll do a quick recap of what we studied yesterday. So, yesterday's class was UFT introduction. Right, so we had UFT introduction. We studied basic things in UFT, like what different screens you get, like the splash screen, and then the add-ins manager page from where you select the add-ins, and then different types of licenses, trial period, seat license, and concurrent license. And then we also studied how to do record and playback, how to record a simple script and how to play back the script, and how to analyze the result file, right? When we also study difference between keyboard view and expert view. So that is what we studied yesterday. So anyone is having any questions from yesterday's class? Any questions? All right. Okay, if there are no questions, we will get started with today's session. So today we are entering the advanced QTP topic, right? So from today we are going to start with advanced QTP topic, that is first and second day of the class were all basic. Now we will slowly start learning the tool. Okay, so how the scripting is done and other details that you should know before you start scripting. So we will get started with that. So first thing we are going to learn today is about object repository. Understanding object repository. What is an object repository in UFT? Now this is a very important topic. So object repository will help you in understanding how the scripts are actually created. But before I tell you what is object repository, first let me tell you what are objects. Now when you have an application, whatever fields or buttons, links, everything that you see on the application is treated as an object by UFT. For example, if you take flight GUI, okay, so I see the flight GUI page where we can book the flight, right? So here I have many fields, right? There are two drop downs to select fly from, fly to. There is a field to set the date, and then I have a drop down to select the class, number of tickets. Then there is a find flights button. Then there is this image here. So everything is treated as an object by UFT, which means this drop down box is an object. It's a drop down box object. Paris, or where I select fly to, is also an object. Find flight button is also an object. So this complete window, micro focus my flight sample application, is also an object. So everything that is there on your application is treated as an object by UFT. Now all these objects will have properties associated with them. When I say properties, these properties are nothing but the properties which describe these objects. Like say it will have many properties: x-axis of the object, y-axis, what is the height of the object, width of the object, what is the type of the object. For example, this is a drop down box. What value is set in this object? What is the name of the object? So like this, it will have list of properties associated with these objects. So these properties, I can say it is similar to say for example, now all the students in the class, so you have list of properties associated with you, right? Say for example, your first name, your last name, your country where you are residing right now, what all courses you are enrolled to. So all these are properties which describe you, right? Similarly, all the objects on your application will have properties that describe the object. So there are some properties which are unique to the objects, like the name of the object, or like how you have your name. Name is usually unique, right? In the class at least, or probably first name and last name combination will be always unique. Some properties are common, like country, or you all have enrolled to QA QTP class. All these are properties which will be unique. Now these properties will help me identify you. When someone asks me a question, How will I know who asked the question? By your name, right? So when you say ping your question in the chat box, your name will appear in the chat box, and by looking at the name, I'll come to know who asked me the question, right? Same way, UFT will also make use of these properties to identify the object. Now there are so many applications open on my computer, right? So I will have browsers open, I will have some other applications running. So how will UFT know? So if I take the example of login, let us take the example of login. We open Flight GUI. Now in the login window, I have username field, password field, OK button, and cancel button. And there's also help button, right? So when I have to set username, how will UFT know where exactly is the username field? Now I will have so many applications open, right? So what UFT will do is when I record. So yesterday we did recording, right? So we did recording on the same Flight GUI application. So when I record, I do actions on these objects. What UFT will do is it will capture the objects along with object properties. So the important ones, not everything, but unique properties or properties which will help UFT in identifying them. So what UFT will do when I record is it will capture the objects that I'm using during recording along with the properties of the object. When I play back the script, it is going to make use of these properties to search for the object on my computer. Okay, when I did recording, name of the object is username and it is an edit box. So when I play back, it will search for an object with the name username and which is an edit box. And then it will go set John in the username field. Same thing happens for the password field. Since I've set the password, it will capture the object along with the properties. When I play back, it will search for the object with the same properties. Once it finds the object, it will perform the action. So this happens with each and every object that you have used during recording. Because there should be some way for UFT to identify the object, right? So when I play back, how will UFT come to know where exactly to set John or HP? So there should be some way for UFT to understand where exactly it has to perform the actions. So this is how it works. So everything is an object. All these objects on your application will have properties associated with them. Right? So UFT is going to make use of some of the properties to identify the object. And these properties are captured during recording. So when you record, these objects along with the properties are stored in one place. And when I play back, it is going to make use of this information to identify the object and then perform the action. Right? Now what all objects you think will be there in object repository? What do you think? So for the login script, for example, if it is a login test, so what do you think? What all objects you can find in object repository? Any idea? You can guess from this login window. Yes, username field, right? Any other object? Yes, password field, correct. Any other object? Button, OK button, yes. So will I have cancel button in my object repository? Do you think cancel button will be there in my object repository for the login test that we recorded yesterday? No. So there are many objects on my application, but not all objects are added to repository. So only the objects that I used during recording will be added to my object repository. So since I've used only 3 objects for the login test, username field, password field, and OK button. So only these three objects will be there in my object repository. So what all objects you use during recording? That means on the objects, what all objects on which you performed actions, only those objects will be added to object repository. Not everything is added, because in your script you are making use of only these three objects. So other objects are not required, right? So you will find only these three objects in the object repository. So that is how all your scripts are going to work, right? So this is the basic concept. When you record, objects are added to your object repository. Repository is like a database which is going to store all the objects and their properties. When you play back, it will make use of the objects and their properties which are stored in object repository, and then it will perform action on the application. Let me show you UFT architecture diagram. Okay, voice is breaking. Anyone else facing same issue? Is my voice clear? Okay, okay, just one second. Can you guys hear me? Is it better now? My voice is audible. Is my voice audible now? Better? Okay. Just let me know in case it happens again. I'll connect to a different network. Okay, Sonam had a question. Let me just scroll up. Can we capture image properties? Yes, even image is an object. Right? So even image that is there on your application is an object. So everything that you see on your application is an object. So image is also treated as an object, and image will also have properties associated with it. So if you take the example of flight GUI, there's an image on the right side, right? So even that is an object. It is treated as an object, and it will have list of properties associated with it. So using that property, you can identify the image. Okay, yeah. So this is the QTP or UFT architecture diagram. If you see here, UFT architecture is divided into three layers. The three layers, okay, just one second. Okay. Can you guys hear me now? I've connected to a different network. Can you hear me? Is it better? Okay. All right. So if you see here, UFT architecture is divided into three layers. You have layer 1, layer 2, and layer 3. Layer 1 is your application. So if you see here, layer 1 is the script that gets generated when you record. So yesterday we did recording where we set username, password, and we clicked on the OK button, right? Some VB script code got generated. So that VB script code is nothing but your layer 1. So when you record, it will record the actions that you did on the application, and it will generate a equivalent code. Okay, so that is your layer 1. That is your layer 1. Layer 2, layer 2 is your object repository. Okay, so layer 2 is your object repository. Now when I record all the actions that I did on the application, so whatever objects I use during recording will be stored in object repository. So if I use 3 objects, agent name, password and OK button, these 3 objects will be added to object repository along with their properties. Properties or physical description. Physical description means properties of the object. Like I said, there will be many properties for that object, like x-axis, y-axis, name, is it enabled or not, what is the height, what is the width. So like this there will be many properties. UFT is going to capture important properties that will help UFT in identifying the object. So these objects and their properties or physical description will be stored in object repository, which is my layer 2. And the third layer is my application. Third layer is my application. Now layer 1 and layer 2 will interact with each other and they will perform action on layer 3, which is nothing but my application. Okay, so there is an agent name box. First line, when I run this, first line says there's an agent name box, edit box. So it will go to object repository, pick the agent name edit box, pick its properties, search for the object on the application with the same properties, and then perform the action. Set Mercury. And then it goes to the second line. Same thing happens on the second line. First, what it will do, it will pick the object. Okay, it's a password, edit box. Go to object repository, get the properties of password box, search for the object on the application with the same properties, and then perform the action. Perform the action on the application. And then the last line, OK button. Go to object repository, get the properties of the OK button from object repository, search for the same object, search for the object with the same properties on the application, and then perform the action, that is click on the OK button. So that is how each line is executed in your UFT. Right? So layer 1 is nothing but your script. Layer 2 is your object repository where your objects and their physical descriptions are stored. Layer 3 is when layer 1 and layer 2 will interact and then it will perform action on layer 3. So that is how all your scripts are going to work. Now let us have a look at object repository. Just connect. Okay. Now yesterday's script, let me go to yesterday's script. Yeah, this is the one, right? Here okay, here I have this test. We have 3 steps. We are setting the agent name and then we are setting password and then we are clicking on the OK button. Correct? Now this is my layer 1, nothing but script that got generated when I did recording. Now let us have a look at layer 2, which is my object repository. Now all these 3 objects which I have used during recording should be there in my object repository, right? So you can open object repository from here. On the top you have resources button and you can see the one which is in blue. You have this resources button, click on resources. So under resources, select object repository. Resources, under resources, select object repository. So this will open object repository and you will see these objects, agent name, password and OK button in your object repository along with the description of the object. Okay, so this is my object repository. Here you can see the objects. Okay, this got added by mistake I think when I was recording, so you can just delete this window. So when you record, only these objects will be there in your object repository. You can see agent name, you can see password field, and then you can also see OK button. The three plus there's one more, right? You can see there's one more object, micro focus my flight sample. What object is this? I used only three objects, but if you see here, there are four objects in my OR. So any idea what object is this? Application or the parent, right? So when you add the objects, parent is automatically added to object repository. It is nothing but the main window where all these objects are there, right? So micro focus my flight sample application. So this is the main window where all your objects like username, password, OK button are there. It will add the parent automatically because if you add the parent, it is easy for UFT to search for the object. So it knows that okay, agent name is in the micro focus sample application. So it does not have to search on each and every application that is open, right? So just imagine if parent is not added, if it has to search for the OK button, and if I have say 10 browsers open, 5 other applications running, I have this flight GUI also open, so it has to search on each and every application for this OK button for just one object, right? So which makes it complicated. So that is why parent is automatically added, which will help UFT in identifying the objects faster. It knows that okay, it has to look for the OK button in the micro focus my flight sample application. So it will first search for this application on your computer, and only in this application it will search for username field. Only in this application it will search for password field, right? So if the parent is added, then it is easy for UFT to identify the object. So whenever you record, apart from whatever objects you have used, parent is automatically added. Like I said, even this is an object. Your complete application window is an object, right? So parent is automatically added to object repository. Okay, so one question I will ask you. So what do you think will be the parent for a web application? Any idea? What do you think will be the parent for a web application? You can just think. So just like here, it's a window sample window. So which one will be the parent? Okay, you can think as an object. When I say parent, it should be an object. So link is a property, right? So link is just a URL that is there on which object? Where do you enter the link? Web. Browser, right? Browser will be the parent for a web application because on the browser you have your application, right? So browser will be the parent. So just for your information, but anyways we will be using web applications later. So that time I'll show you object repository. But just thought I'll give you this information. So whatever objects you are using, parent is automatically added to your object repository. Right, so one is, if you see here, all these objects are there under this parent. You can see the hierarchy, right? So in object repository you can see the hierarchy of the object, which is the parent, and what all objects are added under that window, right? So this is the OK button, and these are the, now if you see here, so these are the properties which UFT is using to identify this object. Right, so these are the physical description of the object. So it will make use of these properties to identify the object. You will have properties for all these objects. Agent name, these are the properties. password, these are the properties. So when I run, it is going to make use of these properties to identify the object, and then it will perform action on the objects. That is how it is going to work. Okay, so all these objects are added automatically when you do recording. However, we'll be learning later how to add objects manually also. That also can be done. You can add objects manually to object repository. So that is something we'll study later. Okay, so that is about object repository. If object is not found in object repository, then QTP will not be able to identify the object. Right? So whatever objects you are using in your script should be there in object repository. Only then QTP will be able to identify the object. If it is not able to find any object in object repository, but you're still using that object in your script, then your script will not work. It will fail because there's no information for UFT to search for or identify the object, right? So ultimately it will fail. So whatever objects you are using in your script should be there in object repository. So this is the main or the basic concept of UFT. So it's like the backbone of UFT, object repository. So how your scripts actually work. Okay, is it clear? Any questions in this, in object repository? If you have any questions, then you can just let me know before we move on to the next topic. Okay. Alright. So that is about object repository. Now next thing we are going to learn is about checkpoints. What are checkpoints? Checkpoints are used to compare expected result and actual result. Now let us go back to the script that we created yesterday. Okay, so this one where we are setting agent name, where we are setting the password, and then we are clicking on the OK button. But is it a test? Are we validating anywhere if login is successful or not? No, right? We are just doing actions on the application. Nowhere we are validating if login is successful or not. But that is not an actual test. You're doing automation testing, which means you need to test the application. You need to refer the manual test case, and whatever is written in the manual test case, you need to do exactly the same thing on the application. Now let us go back to the manual test case that we saw yesterday for the login test. Yes, this is the manual test case. Right? It says open application, enter username, enter password, click on the OK button. So when you click on the OK button, user is able to log in. What is the expected result? When you click on the OK button, user should be able to log in. So after you click on the OK button, you need to validate if user is able to log in or not. So you have to validate something, right? When you're doing testing, we have to validate the application. If the expected result and actual result, nothing but what we are seeing on the application, is same or not. So, but in my script, I'm just doing actions. Nowhere I'm validating if login is successful or not. But that is something which I should include in my script. Not just entering username, password and clicking on the OK button. After I click on the OK button, I need to validate if login is successful or not. If login is happening, then my test should pass. If login failed, then my test should fail, right? So let us see how to add checkpoints. Checkpoints are used to do the validations. They are nothing but your validation points. They are used to do the validations. There are two ways of using checkpoints, or there are two ways of doing your validations. One is using the inbuilt checkpoint feature of QTP or UFT. So in QTP or UFT, you have this inbuilt feature using which you can insert checkpoints but this method is usually not recommended. We usually don't use it in real time. I'll tell you why when we cover both. And the second one is using the exist method. So this one is highly recommended, the second one. So either you can do validations using checkpoints, inbuilt checkpoints. You can insert checkpoints and do the validation, or you can use the exist method. We'll learn both, but second one is I highly recommend it when compared to the first one. First, let us see how to do validation using inbuilt checkpoint. Let me create a new test. New. So we'll learn how to create a test again. The new test. Give a name to the test. I'll give the name as checkpoint example. Select the location where you want to save the test. I want to save it in this path, C automation 18 September. And then click on create. And you click on create. Okay, it will create this test. Go to action. Okay, let me close all this. Okay. So it's a blank editor window because I've not recorded anything. Now let me record the test for login. So I'll click on record. I'll click on this record button. Windows application. I'll select the second option. I'll tell QTP to open the application for me. So I'll click on plus. Browse for the application you want to open. Select the application you want to open. Flights GUI. This is the one. Click on OK. And then click on apply. Click on OK. So this will open the application. Here first I'll set username John. You can see some lines getting written in the editor window. Password is HP. Click on OK. And then for now I'll stop the recording. So I'll click on the stop button to stop recording. So I've just recorded the login part where I'm setting username, password, and then we are clicking on the OK button. Now, after clicking on the OK button, I need to validate if login is successful or not, right? So how to validate if login is successful? If you manually, it is very simple, right? So click on OK and then you validate if the next page is appearing and you're done. So automation, how to validate if login is successful or not? You can use any objects. You can use any object which is there on the next page that will ensure that login is successful. So these objects appear only if login is successful, right? So you can take book flight. Here you can see there's a text called book flight. You will see this only if login is successful. I will be able to book the flight only if login is successful, right? Or you can use find flight button. Any of the objects that you feel will appear only if login is successful, you can make use of that object to do the validation. I can add a checkpoint on any of this object. I can tell UFT, see if this book flight is there. If it is there, then login has passed. If we are not able to find it, then something went wrong and my script should fail. So that is how you do the validation. However, like how you do it manually, you need to add a checkpoint to automate it. So I can tell UFT, look for this book flight text or for this object. If this object is there, then pass my test. If this object is not there, then fail my test. Right? So let us see how to add a checkpoint for book flight. To add checkpoint, so we are first learning the first method. So to add a checkpoint, you should be in recording mode. you should be in recording mode. So let me first save this test and click on record. Now I'm in recording mode. Right, so in the recording window, this is your recording window. In the recording window, here you can see a button. When you hover, it tells you what this button is for. So this button is to insert checkpoint. And so in the recording window, here you can see there is a button with a bubble, right? So click on that button to insert checkpoint. When you click on the button, you will see many checkpoints. For different types of validations, you have different types of checkpoints. There is standard checkpoint to validate any object and the properties. You have bitmap checkpoint. If it is an image, then you can use bitmap checkpoint. If you want to just validate any text, then you can use a text checkpoint. If it is a text area, like a paragraph kind of thing, then you can use text area checkpoint. Accessibility checkpoint is for accessibility testing. So where you validate if your website is adhering to the accessibility standards, which means people with disabilities should also be able to use the website, right? So that is accessibility checkpoints. Database checkpoint to validate something in your database. You have XML to validate an XML file, and to validate any other file you have file checkpoint. So like this, there are different types of checkpoints. Depending on what you're validating, you can select a checkpoint. If you're validating an image, you can select a bitmap checkpoint. If it is just a text, then you can select text checkpoint. Standard checkpoint is the most commonly used, so which is for the object and the properties. If you want to validate any property of the object, then you can use standard checkpoint. Right, so these are different checkpoints available. So depending on the type of validation that you are using, you can select the checkpoint. Let me select standard checkpoint. So select the checkpoint that you want to add. So I want to validate the book flight object. So I'll select standard checkpoint. Select the checkpoint. When you select the checkpoint, you will get this hand pointer. Using hand pointer, click on the object you want to validate. I want to validate this book flight. So using this hand pointer, I'll go and click on book flight. Here in this window, just click on OK. It will give you a list of properties associated with this object. It will also select the default properties which will help you in your validation. So usually that property is enough to validate. If you see here, it is validating if book flight is enabled and the text should be book flight. Right, so it will search for this object called book flight. It will also validate if it is enabled or not when you run. Right, so it will validate this after clicking on the OK button if there is a book flight selected text and if it is enabled. Here, just click on OK. When you click on OK, checkpoint is added. You can see one line got added here in the back end. You can see one extra line got added to my script. So that is how you insert checkpoint. Go to recording mode. Select the checkpoint that you want to add by clicking on this button. And then you will get the hand pointer. Using the hand pointer, click on the object you want to validate. So I wanted to validate the book flight text, so I clicked on it. So it will give you a list of properties and what all you want to validate. You can just select that and click on OK. Checkpoint is inserted. Now when I run, after clicking on the OK button, it will see if book flight text is there and if it is enabled. If yes, then my test will pass. If it is not able to find the book flight text, then my test will fail. Right, so once you are done adding checkpoint, you can stop the recording. You can see this line number 5 is nothing but my checkpoint which I have added on the book flight text. Okay, now let us save and run this test. Click on run. Now I need to Close, just 1 second. Okay, click on run. First it will open the application, set username as John, password as HP, it will log in, and then it is at line number 5 where it is validating the checkpoint. And my checkpoint has passed, right? My test has passed because login is successful. And you can see the details here. Agent name, setting agent name worked, setting password worked, clicking on the OK button worked, and here is my checkpoint. Checkpoint also worked, right? You can see the details of the checkpoint here. So my checkpoint has passed. There is a green tick mark which means my checkpoint has passed. Login was successful, my test worked. So this is one way of doing your validation. To insert the inbuilt checkpoint, go to recording mode and from the recording window select the checkpoint you want to add, what you want to validate, and when you run it is going to do the same validation on your application. However, this method is usually not recommended. In real time we usually don't use this method. We always use the second method, which is exist. Same validation, you can validate if login is successful or not using the exist method. Now let us learn the second method. Second method requires some coding, but that is very important in real time, right? So apart from recording, you will now be learning how to customize your test. Now I don't want to use inbuilt checkpoint. I don't want to use line number 5. You can just comment this line. To comment a line in VB, I will use single quote. Single quote is treated as comment. What is a comment? When you comment a line, that particular line will not be executed. I have commented line number 5 and if you see here it turns green, right? So whatever is in green will not be executed. So during execution only line number 1, 2 and 3 will get executed. It will skip line number 5 because I have commented that line. Comments are used when you don't want to execute any particular line. You can just include single inverted comma, single quote before that line, and that particular line will be treated as comment. Comments are also used when you want to give some test information, which is just for information and not for execution. Something like this. So I'll give test description, what this test is doing, validates flight reservation, login. You can also give information about the author who created this test, date when this test was created, so like this, who is the reviewer. So like this you can give details about, say Sonam is the reviewer, you can give details about the test. Now these details are just for information, right, and not for execution. I cannot execute these lines. I don't want QTP to execute these lines. This is just for information, so I will add them as comments. So just include single quote before the line and that line will be treated as comment and it will not be executed. So whatever you see in green is treated as comment and it will not be executed. So to comment a line in VB, we use single inverted comma. Okay, now I have commented this line where I have added the inbuilt checkpoint. Now let us learn the second method, exist method. How to use the exist method to validate my login test. So after clicking on the OK button, I can validate, same way I can validate any of the object which is there on the application. Say I will, let us, okay, see if this find flights button is there or not. After clicking on the OK button, you can use any of the object. I can use book flight also. But this time let us use find flight. You will be able to book the flight only if login is successful, right? Which means I will see this find flights button only if login is successful. So after clicking on the OK button, I can tell UFT check if find flight button is there. If it is there, then pass my test. If it is not there, then fail my test. Okay. But before I write the code, I need to first have this in the object repository, right? I did not use this during recording, which means find flight button is not there in my object repository. So first step we need to do is get this object in object repository. I need to first add the find flights button to my object repository. So let us do that first. Let me open object repository from here. Resources, object repository. I have these objects which I've added or which got added during recording. I have agent name, password, OK button, and then this is for the book flight. Right, so now I want to add the find flights button. Like I said earlier, you can add objects manually also to object repository. So to add the objects manually to object repository, I will use this button. You can see there's a green plus button. This button is used to add the objects. Okay, click on this button. When you click on the button, you will get a hand pointer. Using this hand pointer, click on the object you want to add. I want to add find flights button. So using this hand pointer, I'll go click on find flights. Right? It will ask you if this is the object you want to add, find flights button. Yes, right? So just click on OK. Click on OK. This object is added to object repository. Now you can find this find flight button in your object repository. This is how you add the object. Just click on this green plus button. You will get hand pointer. Using that hand pointer, click on the object you want to add. It will just ask you for confirmation if this is the object that you want to add. Just click on OK and that object will be added to your object repository. Okay, now first step is done. We have added the object to repository. Now I can make use of that object in my script. Right, so I need to follow the hierarchy. I need to start with the parent, right? I need to first tell about the parent. So in this micro focus window, I have this find flight button. So what I'll do, let us go back to the script. After clicking on the OK button, here I have to validate if the find flight button is there or not. So I will use a condition. There's a condition. If find flight button is there, then pass my test, else fail my test. Right? So I will use the command if for conditions. If is a command in VB which is used for conditions. Just type if and give space. It will automatically give you the syntax. If and then write your condition. What is my condition? I should start with the parent. There is a WPF window. Name of the window will auto populate since this object is already there in the object repository. So you don't have to type. Right? Micro focus my flight sample application is a parent. In this window, I have a WPF button. What is the name of the button? Since there are two buttons, it will show you both. So I have to first use this, right? Find flights button. So there is a find flights button. If this button exists, I will use dot. There's a method called exist which will check for the existence of the object. So if there is a WPF window, my flight sample application, in this window there is a WPF button called find flights. If this button exists, then what I'm supposed to do, I have to pass my test, right? How to pass or fail your test? So ultimately, I'll be looking at the result file. Result file is going to tell me whether my script has passed or failed. So when I used inbuilt checkpoint, it will automatically be logged in the result file, and result file will tell me whether the checkpoint has passed or failed. But here I'm writing my own code. So there is a method called reporter.reportEvent which is used to print messages in your result file. So now this method is something which we'll be using in all the tests. This method is used to print messages in your result file. So I'll explain you about this method. For now, I'll just type reporter.reportEvent, and then you can select whether you want to pass the test, fail the test, done, or warning. So if find flight button exists, then my test should pass, right? So I'll select make pass, and then you can give a step name, any meaningful step name you can give. I'll give the step name as login since we are validating the login test. And then you can give your message. Login is successful. So this is if find flight button exists. If it does not exist, let us write an else block also. I will write else. Else is if find flight button does not exist, then what I'm supposed to do, I have to fail my test, right? So I'll use reporter dot report event. This time I will use make fail. So my test should fail if find flight button does not exist. Make fail. Step name is login step, and I'll give the message saying login failed. Right, so instead of checkpoint, I have written all these lines which will validate if login is successful or not. So it will first check after clicking on the OK button, line number 9, it will check if find flight button exists. If it exists, then pass my test saying login is successful, else fail my test. And the message it will print in your result file is login failed. Right, so if is one of the command in VB script which is used for conditions. So whenever you have a condition or whenever you want to validate something, you will be using the if statement. Right, if and else. Now let us run this test. First it will open the application, and then it will enter username as John, password as HP, and it will log in, and my test has passed. If you see here, the result file, I have agent name, I have password field, then it is clicking on OK, and then it is validating if find flight exists. Yes, object exists. So my test has passed. So this is the step that we have created, login step, and the description says login is successful. Right? Step name I have given is login, and the description that I have given is login is successful. So that is what it will print in the result file. It will print the message saying login successful. Right? So that is how you use the exist method. So use it on the object to check if an object exists or not. If it exists, then you can use reporter.reportEvent. Now reporter.reportEvent, like I said, is a method using which you can print messages in your result file. So syntax is reporter.reportEvent pass or fail. So if it exists, then I need to pass my test, right? So I will use make pass. Make stands for Microsoft Pass. And then give a step name. Any meaningful step name you can give here depending on what you are validating. Since I'm validating login, I'm giving the step name as login. and then your message. So I'm giving message as login is successful. Else, again same thing. Report event, but this time I will fail my test if find flight button does not exist. I'll give again a step name and my message. Right? So you can use report event only with the exist method. You cannot use it in inbuilt checkpoint because inbuilt checkpoint everything is inbuilt. Right? So it is just going to tell you whether your checkpoint has passed or failed. Now let us go to a fail scenario. Say by mistake I have given an invalid username. Instead of John, by mistake I gave the username as John1. It is invalid, right? So now my login test should fail. It should go to else block because John1 will not work. So it cannot find the find flight button and ultimately it should go to the else block. Now let us run this test. Negative scenario. We'll open the application, enter username as John1, password as HP, and it clicked on OK, and I got this error message box saying login failed, right? And if you see in the back end here, your code is stuck at this line where it is trying to find the find flight button, but it is not there because login has failed, right? So it will wait for some time and then it will go to the else block and my test will fail. Right? So this time my test failed. Login step has failed and the description says login. This one. Description says login failed. Right? Because I have given a invalid username. So it will go to the else block and it will print the message saying login failed. You can just go to test flow and see the steps. Setting username worked, password worked, clicked on the OK button. Find flight button exists, object does not exist. So my step has failed and it will give the message saying login failed. Right? So that is how exist method work. Now my report event, okay, say I am doing a overnight execution, which means I am not sitting in front of the system when the execution is happening. Now I look at the result file, okay, my login has failed. It just says login failed. But why login failed? I don't know. I know login did not work. But what is the reason? Problem was with my test data or problem was with the application? I don't know, right? It's not clear in my report event or in this message. I'm not able to figure out why login failed. So what we'll do, instead of just saying login failed, let us add some more information. Let us add what username we have used. Right, so instead of just printing a message saying login failed, we will also print why login failed. Right, so we will also print what username we have used. So let me do one thing here. Here, let me use a variable. What is a variable? Variable is something which will hold a value. Okay, I will use a variable called username. Username is a variable name. You can give any meaningful name. Username is a variable name is equal to what value it is holding. Say it is holding John1. Username is the name of the variable and the value. Now instead of using value everywhere, I can just use the variable name. So instead of John1, I can directly give, instead of value, I can give variable name as username. Set username. What is username? Username is a variable which is having value John1. Okay. Now here, instead of just saying login failed, I'll also tell why login failed. I'll say username used is, what is the username that we are using? It is there in this variable username, right? So what I'll do, I will append, I have to attach this variable with this text. To attach a variable with the text in VB, you use ampersand. Ampersand is used to attach a variable and your text. Now login failed, username used is a text, and to this I want to attach the variable what username I'm using. So this is the variable name, right? So I will attach this variable with this text. So ampersand is like a glue which will attach your text and your variable. So why I'm using variable? Instead of giving John 1 everywhere, I can use a variable and store the value. So in case I have to change it to John and rerun the script, I have to make the changes only in one place here, right? Everywhere else I'm using a reference name, username, variable name. I'm not giving value everywhere. So that is why we use variables. So we use variables to store values. So everywhere you can use the variable name instead of giving values. If you give values, in case you have to change the value and run the script, you have to make the changes in all the lines wherever you are giving values. Instead, if you store it in a variable name will not change, only value is changing. So you have to make the changes only in one place. Right, so that is why I'm using a variable, and instead of just saying login failed, I'm also printing what username I'm using. So username used is, I'm appending username with this text. Now let me save and rerun this test. Click on run. First it will open the application. Enter username as John1, password as HP. It will click on OK. So what happened? My test has failed, right, because of the invalid password. Sorry, invalid username. So it is stuck at line number where it is searching for the find flight button. It will wait for some time and then it will go to the else block and my test will fail. Right, my test has failed. Now if you look at the description, instead of just saying login failed, you will see the message login failed, username used is John1. Now when I look at the result file, it is clear to me, right, why my login has failed. So I have used username as John1, which is invalid, and that is the reason my login test has failed. So like these kind of customized messages you can give only when you use the exist method, because only with exist you can use report events. With checkpoints you cannot, right? So that is why we always use the exist method. And reporter.report event is very useful. You will be using it in every script. Whenever you want to print some messages in your result file, you will always use this method. So what if we are using wrong password? You can, the same way you can append password also. Here I have just shown you an example for username. So you can use both. Username used is what is the username and what password you are using. So both you can print in your result file. But one thing with the password is it is encrypted. So if you want to use direct password HP, you can do that also. You can also print username used is what is the username and what password you are using. You can append both. Okay, you can attach both what username we are using and what password you are using. So that way it will print both what username and password. So which will help you in understanding why it has failed. Yeah, sure. Something like this. I can do the same way. I'll use one more variable called password is equal to HP. So instead of giving password here, I'll give the variable name password. Right? And here, instead of just saying username used is, let us attach some more text. To attach some more text, again I will use ampersand. Let me pull this. Yeah. And then I will say, I'll add some text. Password used is, what is the password? I'll attach this variable, password variable. You can attach as many variables as you want. Just ensure that there is an ampersand between your variable and your text. So I am attaching some more text. So I'll use ampersand. Password used is, I'll attach the password variable. Now in my result file, it will show me both what username and what password I'm using. Now let me save and run this test. Click on run. First it will open the application and then set username as John1, password as HP. Click on OK. Now it is stuck at line number 11 where it is trying to find the find flights button. It will wait for some time and then it will go to the else block. Right, it has gone to the else block and my test has failed. Now if you look at the description, it says login failed, username used is John1, password used is HP. So I'll know, okay, I've used a wrong password, so I can change the test data and rerun the script. If both username and password is correct but still my test is failing, that means something is wrong with the application. Okay, so that is how you use checkpoints, both inbuilt and the exist method. You can just go through this code for a minute and let me know if you want me to explain any of the line again. Can you read this code for 2 minutes? Okay, so that is how you use the exist method. Is it clear? Any other questions in this? Alright. So what other checkpoints are used by you? We saw different types of inbuilt checkpoints, right? Standard, bitmap, text area. So all these are some inbuilt checkpoints which are there in UFT. So we know how to comment a line in VB. Comments are used to instruct not to run a particular line of code. So by using a single quote, you can comment a line in VB. So any line before the line, if you use a single quote, then that will turn green, which means it is treated as comment and that line will not be executed. We already know about record and playback. Right, so that is about the checkpoint. So we learned many things in checkpoints, right? How to use inbuilt, how to use exist method, how to add object manually to object repository, how to comment a line, and how to use reporter.report event. Now you all know that UFT uses VB script for creating the script. So the if statement that we used is a VB script part, right? So if is a VB script command. Now VB script is a language developed by Microsoft. So there are actually two things. One is VB script and the other one is VBA. and you will actually hear two things, VB script, and there's also VBA, Visual Basic Application, Visual Basic Script. VB script is what we will be learning. VB script is something which is used by UFT for automation. VBA is out of scope. It is used by developers to develop the applications. Visual Basic Application is used to develop applications. For example, calculator on your machine is developed using VBA. It's a language used by used by developers to develop applications. VB script is just a subset of VBA. VBA is very vast. VB script is just a portion of VBA, and UFT uses only VB script to write the automation scripts. Right? So we'll be focusing only on VB script and not VBA. VBA is out of scope for a tester. Now, since this is a language developed by Microsoft, both are developed by Microsoft. So since it is a language developed by Microsoft, so if you have a Windows operating system, then you can practice these VB script commands in a notepad. Even if you don't have UFT, all these VB script commands can be practiced in a notepad, and you can also execute your code. So I'll show you how to do that. All these commands like a if statement or loops that we are going to study, so functions that we are going to study, everything you can practice in a notepad also, even if you don't have UFT installed on your machine. So that is only if you have a Windows operating system. Let us write a simple code in a notepad. Let me open a notepad. And in notepad I'll write a simple code to add two numbers. Just increase the font. Okay, so in this notepad I will write a code to add two numbers. Say I have num1 whose value is 10 and I have num2 whose value is 20. I have two numbers, num1 and num2. Num1 value is 10 and num2 value is 20. Say I want to add these two numbers. I want to add these two numbers and I will store the result in a variable called sum. So I'll write sum is equal to num1 plus num2. Sum is equal to num1 plus num2. And then let us give the result in a message box. Message box is a small box that you get along with a OK button. So it will print whatever you want to in a small box. So I'll give message box sum. So it will print sum, that is it will add 10 plus 20, which is 30, and in a message box I will see the output as 30. Okay, so I have written this code, VB script code to add two numbers. Now let me save this. Go to File, Save. When you save, so you are not going to save it with .txt extension. You will be saving it with .vbs extension. So give a name to the file. Let me save it in the same location where we have been saving all our tests. So C drive, automation 18 September. So let me save this file here. Give a name to your file. Let me give the file name as add. But don't save it with .txt extension. If you save it with txt, it's a simple notepad text file. Save it with .vbs extension. Give the extension as VB script. And click on Save. When you click on Save, this file is created and this is VBS file, executable file. I'll close this. Let me go to this location. It's in C drive, automation 18 September. Here you can see this VBS file, add. Okay. Now to run the code, whatever we have written inside this file, if I want to execute this code, just double click on this file. When you double click, code that you have written inside the file gets executed. And you can see the output as 30, which means it is adding the two numbers, and output it is giving me in this message box. Output is 30. So whatever code you write inside that file, just write it in a notepad, save it with .vbs extension. It becomes an executable file. When you double click, whatever code you have written inside that file gets executed. Okay, so it gets executed and you will get the output as 30. So it is adding the two numbers 10 and 20, and I'm getting the output as 30. So in case you want to edit the file, don't double click, because if you double click, code gets executed. So to edit the file, right click on the file, and select edit. Right click and select edit. We'll get the code. Now you can edit this code if you want. So instead of just printing message box sum, let us print some text. Sum of two numbers is, let me append, using ampersand I will append sum with this text. Now instead of just saying 30, it will print this text. Sum of two numbers is, I am appending the variable sum using ampersand. I am appending the variable sum with this text. So it will say sum of two numbers is 30. Right, so I'll save this. Now close the file. Double click to run this. Now when I double click, I'll get the message saying sum of two numbers is 30. So like this, you can practice all the VB commands. Like today we learned the if statement, right? So you can practice the syntax of if statement in a notepad even if you don't have UFT on your machine. Okay. So we already know about ampersand, which is used to concatenate, right? So reserved words cannot be used as variable name. So we used variables, right? We used variables like username, password. So all these are variables which are going to store some value. You can give any meaningful name to your variable apart from the reserved words. Reserved words are nothing but what you see in blue, right? So if, else, and, if, then, set. So all these are reserved words, which means these words are reserved for VB. These are nothing but commands, or so they are commands which are used by VB script. So you cannot use a variable name as if, because it is a command, right? So apart from reserved words, you can give any meaningful name to your variable. So we studied about this notepad, how you can write a VB script. About VBA, it's a Visual Basic Application which is used to develop applications. Both are developed by Microsoft. And we also studied about reporter.report event. Right? So that is about the checkpoints and how to use VB script code in a notepad, how to write it in a notepad. Now let us learn this one. How do you troubleshoot QTP issues? Say you are stuck. Your script is not working. So initially when you are learning, then most of the times your script might not work in the very first go. Right? So it might be syntax error, something is wrong in the syntax that you have used, or there's something wrong in the logic of your script. So when your script fails, how you can troubleshoot or how to fix your QTP issues in real time, or when you're practicing also you can try this. So at least 1 and 2. So when you're stuck, when your script is not working, first thing you can do is you can search in the QTP help file. So there is a help file available with UFT. So you can search in the help file in case you are not sure about the syntax. So this help file has syntax for all the commands that we are using for scripting, right? Say I want to use reporter event, but it is not working, syntax is wrong. So what I can do, I can search for the syntax in the help file. So what you can do is you can just place your cursor on the command for which you want to know the syntax. So I have my cursor here on reporter event, and then just press F1, function key 1. When you press F1, it will open the HP help file. One second. Yeah, since I'm opening it for the first time, it will take some time to open. You can see it getting opened in Chrome. Right, so it will show me the syntax for reporter event. If you can just click on reporter event, it will show you the syntax, other details, what all event status you can use, make pass, make fail, along with example. Right, so it has all the details about any command that you are using in your script. So you can just place the cursor on that command and press F1. It will open the help file, and in the help file you can search for the syntax, why it is used, what all things you should give, along with example. So here you can find the examples also on how to use reporter event. Right, so it shows you how to use reporter event. Okay, so this is one thing you can do when your script is not working. Okay, search in the QTP help file, which has all the commands and the syntax along with examples. So in case you're not able to find a solution in QTP help file, second thing you can do is search on the internet. So there are a lot of QTP forums available on the internet. So just go to Google, type in your issue, and you will find many solutions. Okay, so there are n number of forums for QTP. It is easy to fix the issues when you search on the internet. So most of your issues will be fixed when you use 1 and 2. So in real time, when you're stuck, you can always follow 1 and 2 to fix your issues. So almost all your issues can be fixed when you use help file or when you search on the internet. So in case you're not able to fix the issue even after following 1 and 2, you can go for the third option. Check with your peers, co-employees, one more automation tester. So if they have faced a similar issue or if they know a solution, they can always help you. So go for the third one only after doing 1 and 2. Okay, so you can check with your peers, ask them if they know solution or how to make it work, or your automation lead or automation tester. You can contact them and get the issue fixed. So even after using 3, if the issue is still not fixed, last option you have is contact HP customer support. So that will be the last option. After you have tried 1, 2 and 3, you can contact HP, or now it is Micro Focus. Right, so you will get, when your company purchases the license, they will also pay for customer support. So in case you are stuck, something is not working, you can always contact Micro Focus. If you are using the latest version, then it will be Micro Focus. So you can contact Micro Focus. So they will do some screen sharing. You can share your screen, you can give them the control, and they will fix the issue for you. So if it is any tool related, you are not able to add the objects, or the objects are not getting recognized, you're not able to record the script, so any issues you're facing, so after you have tried 1, 2 and 3, if you're still not able to fix the issue, then you can contact, the fourth option you have is contact customer support. So you can contact customer support. You can also sign in. You need to sign in to their site, register, because your company will be paying customer support fee. Apart from the license cost, company pays around $300K for 3 years of support. That includes all 3 tools, QTP, QC and Load Runner. So all three tools included. Customer support cost is $300K. So you can contact HP in case you're facing any issues. So when you're contacting, you need to provide something called as service agreement ID. So when your company pays for the customer support, they'll give a agreement ID. So you need to mention that ID when you're raising a ticket. So you can ask your lead or manager, they will have this ID, they will provide the ID, and using that ID you can contact HP or Microfocus and they will fix the issue for you. So you can follow these four options when you're stuck, if your script is not working. Okay, so that is how you troubleshoot QTP issues. It's already time. I'll stop here and we will continue again next week. The next UFT class will be on Tuesday, that is 25th of September. September 25th will be the next UFT class. So today we have started with the advanced UFT topic. So it is complicated. So you may not understand everything in the class. So please do practice whatever we have studied in today's class. Go through the recording and practice the same thing. So tomorrow we will learn some more, not tomorrow, sorry, next week we'll learn some more UFT topics. Okay, so any questions in today's session before we wind up? Anyone is having any questions? Any questions? Yeah, sorry, my connection was lost. So any questions you guys have? All right. If there are no questions, we will wind up for today and we'll continue again next week. Okay. Thank you so much. Good night. Bye bye.